Jesus corrected Martha. But why? She was serving, working, dedicating herself. Meanwhile, Mary simply sat at the Master's feet, and it was Martha who received the correction. Does that seem fair to you? The story of Martha and Mary hides a truth that can completely change the way you live your faith today, because Martha in the Bible is not just an ancient character. She is you, she is me, she is everyone who once confused serving God with being close to God. What Jesus said to Martha that day in Bethany wasn't rejection, it was revelation. And what happened next, when Lazarus's death shook that household, proved that those words transformed Martha forever. Stay until the end, because the most profound lesson about Martha will only be revealed in the final minutes of this video, and you're going to need it. Shall we begin? A few miles from Jerusalem, in a village called Bethany in the Bible, there was a unique house. It wasn't a palace. It didn't have luxuries, but it had something few homes possessed: open doors to Jesus. 3 siblings lived there: Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. An ordinary family with simple routines, but one that would become the setting for some of the most intense moments of Christ's ministry. Martha, Lazarus's sister, was known by everyone. She was the oldest, the most practical, the one who kept everything running smoothly. While Mary watched, Martha organized. While Lazarus talked, Martha prepared. But that house held more than hospitality. It held silent conflicts, invisible tensions, and an encounter that would forever change the way we understand what it means to serve God. Because when Jesus entered that house, something happened. Something that exposed the heart, something that divided the waters between doing and being. And at the center of it all was Martha. The woman everyone admired for her dedication, but who carried a burden no one saw, a burden only Jesus could name. Who was Martha in the Bible? More than a hostess, more than a devoted servant. She was a mirror of a struggle that spans generations, the battle between service and belonging. Martha's hands never stopped. From dawn onward, she was already in motion. Bread needed to be prepared, the house needed to be organized, guests needed to be received with dignity. Martha was a symbol of service, the woman who served Jesus not only with words, but with concrete, visible, and measurable actions. Imagine a scene. The afternoon sun streams through the stone windows of the house in Bethany. The scent of spices fills the air. Martha paces back and forth, arranging cushions, preparing the meal, making sure everything is perfect for Jesus and his disciples. Her face is serious, focused. There's sweat on her brow. There's a rush in her steps. She wants everything to go well. She needs everything to go well, because to serve for Martha was to love. It was to honor. It was to prove her devotion. No one questioned Martha's dedication. She was trustworthy, tireless, essential. While others listened, she made sure there was food on the table. While others rested, she worked to make everyone feel welcome. The story of Martha and Mary has always been marked by this contrast. One served with her hands, the other listened with her heart. But there was something happening inside Martha that no one noticed. Something that began as zeal and turned into a burden. Something that began as devotion and turned into a demand. Because when service becomes the only way to validate our presence, we lose something essential along the way. And Jesus was about to show her this, not with cruelty, but with truth. Because only those who truly love have the courage to correct. On the outside, Martha was admirable. On the inside, she was exhausted. And worst of all, she couldn't stop. She couldn't sit. She couldn't simply be, because for her, doing nothing was a waste. It was irresponsible. It was a failure. Martha and religious activism were born precisely from this place, from the belief that our acceptance before God depends on how much we do for Him. It's not faith, it's performance. It's not love, it's obligation. And when service ceases to flow from communion and begins to replace it, the result is always the same: Martha and spiritual anxiety. How many times have you felt this way? Too busy to pray, too tired to read the Word, too caught up in God's business to simply be with God. This was Martha's dilemma. She served the Master, but she didn't listen to him. She honored Jesus with her actions, but lost his presence in the process. And the most painful part, she thought she was right. She thought Mary was the lazy one, the irresponsible one, the one who didn't help. Meanwhile, resentment grew, frustration built up, and the distance between her and Jesus grew, even though they were in the same house. What we learn from Martha here is powerful. It is possible to be close to Jesus and at the same time completely distant from him. It is possible to serve him without knowing him. It is possible to work for him without resting in him. And Jesus wasn't going to let this go unnoticed, because he didn't come just to be served. He came to be known, to be loved, to be chosen. And Martha was about to discover the difference. Jesus entered the house in Bethany, and with him came the opportunity to choose. Mary chose to sit, Martha chose to serve. Two sisters, two attitudes, two ways of responding to Christ's presence. Luke 10:39 tells us, "And she had a sister named Mary, who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to his word." Meanwhile, Martha was absorbed in many servings, and herein lies the difference between Martha and Mary that many miss. It's not that one was good and the other bad. It's that one chose presence and the other chose performance. And before we continue, if this video touched your heart, please like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any life-changing Bible stories. This helps us continue bringing you quality content. Martha and Jesus' presence were in the same room, but not in the same place. She was so focused on serving that she didn't realize the Master wanted more than a meal. He wanted fellowship. He wanted attention. He wanted her to stop and simply be there. But Martha couldn't. And then came the moment of explosion. Luke 10:40 records, "Martha was busy doing much serving. Then she came to Jesus and said, 'Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the serving by myself? Tell her to help me.'" Do you see what happened? Martha didn't ask for help. She demanded justice. She didn't express weariness. She accused, and worse, she tried to turn Jesus against Mary. When Jesus visited Martha's home, he didn't just find hospitality. He found a woman in crisis, struggling with something she didn't understand. And the answer that came next wasn't what she expected. It wasn't validation, it was confrontation, it was truth. It was liberation disguised as correction. "Martha, Martha," twice. Jesus repeated her name twice. And whenever Jesus repeats a name in Scripture, it's because something profound is about to be said. It's not anger, it's intimacy, it's not rejection, it's mindfulness. And then came what Jesus said to Martha. "You are worried and troubled about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Luke 10:41-42. Imagine the silence that followed. Imagine the weight of those words. Imagine Martha, her hands still covered in flour, her apron tied tightly, her face lined with exertion, hearing that everything she thought was essential wasn't. Jesus corrected Martha, but not in the way it might seem at first glance. He didn't say serving was wrong. He said serving with restlessness was. He didn't reject Martha's work. He exposed the heart behind it. Because it wasn't the service that was wrong. It was the motivation. It was the anxiety. It was the search for validation through doing. Only one thing is necessary. Just one thing. Not 10, not 5. One. And that thing wasn't in the kitchen. It wasn't in the dishes. It wasn't in the perfect organization of the house. It was at the feet of Jesus, in listening, in presence, in relationship. And this is where the lesson of Martha and Mary becomes devastatingly timely. For how many of us are restless, worried about many things, while neglecting the one thing necessary? How many of us are so busy for God that we forget to be with God? Jesus wasn't despising Martha. He was freeing her from herself, from the vicious cycle of trying to prove her worth through works. And this liberation, though painful at the time, would be the greatest gift she could receive. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it was just beginning. What was Jesus really saying when he corrected Martha? Many interpret it as rejecting practical service in favor of passive contemplation. But this would contradict the entire message of the gospel, where Jesus constantly values service. The truth is deeper. Jesus was exposing a dangerous distortion. When we serve to compensate for a lack of intimacy, when we do things so we don't have to be, when we run so we don't have to stop and face our inner emptiness. Martha and Jesus' presence were physically together but spiritually separated. The Bible study on Martha reveals a pattern that repeats itself throughout Scripture. God always prioritizes the heart over ritual, relationships over religion, love over law. In Hosea 6:6 he says, "For I desire mercy, not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings." Martha was offering burnt offerings. Jesus desired knowledge, intimacy, and presence. The lesson of Martha and Mary is not that one form of service is superior to another. It's that no form of service replaces relationship. Mary chose to be with Jesus first and then to serve for Jesus. Martha reversed the order. And when we reverse this order, service becomes a burden, devotion becomes an obligation, and faith becomes a religious performance. Reflecting on Martha and Mary confronts us with an uncomfortable question. Are we so busy building the kingdom that we've forgotten to know the King? Could it be that our evangelical activism actually hides a flight from real intimacy with God? Jesus wasn't asking Martha to stop serving. He was inviting her to serve from a different place. Not from anxiety, but from peace. Not from obligation, but from overflow. Not to be accepted, but because she was already loved. And this truth would change everything in Martha's life, especially when the worst happened. The great tension in Martha's life was between action and contemplation, between doing and being, between serving and being. And this isn't just her battle, it's ours. Martha and faith in the midst of service represent the dilemma of every sincere Christian trying to balance practical devotion with spiritual intimacy. We live in a culture that values productivity above all else, that measures spirituality by religious activities, that celebrates those who do more, not those who love better. And in this context, Martha would be a heroine. She would be the exemplary leader, the tireless servant, the woman of action. But Jesus comes and turns everything upside down. He says that restlessness is not a virtue, that anxiety is not zeal, that being too busy can actually be a way of avoiding confrontation with one's own soul. Martha and religious activism were born precisely from this evasion. If I'm always doing something, I don't need to stop to feel, to question, to simply be. What we learn from Martha is that there is a radical difference between serving God and serving our need for approval. Between working for the kingdom and working to prove our worth. Between action that flows from communion and activism that replaces communion. And here's the paradox. When we prioritize God's presence, our service becomes more effective, not less. When we rest in Him first, we work better later. When we stop to listen, we act more wisely. Mary wasn't lazy. She was wise. She understood that without first receiving, there is nothing genuine to give. Martha and the spiritual anxiety that consumed her would only be healed when she learned this lesson, and the final test of this learning was near, closer than she could have imagined. Time passed, and then tragedy struck. Lazarus, the beloved brother, fell ill. Martha and Mary sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." John 11:3. They expected him to come immediately, but Jesus delayed, and Lazarus died. 4 days later, when Jesus finally arrived in Bethany, Martha went out to meet him, and what she said at that moment reveals something extraordinary about her transformation. She didn't accuse him. She didn't demand anything from him. She simply said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. John 11:21-22. Do you see? The woman who was once anxious was now at peace, even in the face of death. The woman who once demanded now trusted. The woman who once worried about many things now clung to the one thing necessary, faith in Christ. And when Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again," Martha responded theologically, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." John 11:24. But Jesus wanted more than theology. He wanted personal revelation. And so he said, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live." Do you believe this? And Martha's response was the most powerful confession in the Gospel of John. "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." John 11:27. This is no longer the anxious Martha. This is Martha transformed. This is the woman who learned her lesson, who stopped worrying about many things and clung to the one thing she needed, who stopped trying to prove her worth through service and rested in the identity Christ gave her. Martha, Lazarus' sister, is not remembered only for the correction she received. She's remembered for the faith she confessed. And this transformation was only possible because Jesus loved her enough to confront her that day in the kitchen. Martha's story is not one of failure, it's a story of redemption. She began as a restless woman, worried about many things, but she ended as a woman of faith who confessed Christ in the face of death. Martha, example or warning? Both. She is a warning when she represents our empty activism, our anxiety disguised as zeal, our fear of stopping and simply being. But she is an example when she shows that we can learn, grow, and change, that Jesus' correction is not condemnation, but an invitation to transformation. Martha's legacy teaches us that God is not interested in our religious performance. He wants our hearts. It doesn't matter how many things we do for Him if we are not truly with Him. And when we finally understand this, our way of serving changes completely. We stop serving out of obligation and start serving out of overflow. We stop doing things to be accepted and start doing things because we are already loved. We stop worrying about so many things and focus on the only thing that truly matters, being at the feet of Jesus. The lesson of Martha and Mary spans centuries because it touches the heart of the Christian experience. The tension between doing and being, between work and grace, between effort and rest. And Jesus' response is always the same. First presence, then service. First relationship, then religion. First Mary, then Martha. But when we understand this, we are still Martha. We become the Martha Jesus always intended us to be, the one who serves from intimacy, not to earn it. The one who works from rest, not to earn it. The one who acts from love, not to earn it. And this is Martha who confesses before her brother's tomb, "You are the Christ," because only those who rest in Him can fully recognize Him. Now pause and ask yourself, if Jesus were to enter your home today, what would He find? Would He find someone restless, worried about many things? Or would He find someone at peace, focused on the one thing necessary? Reflecting on Martha and Mary isn't about judging ways of serving. It's about examining the heart behind the service. Do you serve God from intimacy with Him or to compensate for its lack? Does your religious activity flow from communion or replace it? What we learn from Martha is that we can be in the presence of Jesus and still lose Him. We can be occupied with sacred things and neglect the sacred itself. We can build the kingdom and lose the king in the process. And when this happens, service becomes a burden, devotion becomes obligation, and the joy of the gospel turns into religious weariness. But there is hope. The same hope that transformed Martha. Jesus doesn't give up on us. He corrects us because He loves us. He confronts us because He wants to set us free. And when we finally stop, sit at His feet, and simply be, we discover what He always wanted to give us. Not a to-do list, but a relationship. No longer service, but communion. Not anxiety, but peace. Now it's your turn. If this message touched your heart, leave a comment. Do you identify more with Martha or Mary? And what is God saying to you through this story? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue this journey of transformation with us. And remember, Jesus' call is not to do more, but to be more. Not to serve better, but to love better. Not to worry about many things, but to choose the one thing that is necessary. Martha learned, Mary always knew. And you, what will your choice be today? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face shine upon you and give you peace. Until the next video.